Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Please Put Them On, Takamine-san. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I went into this series already, because I read the synopsis, so I went into the series knowing kind of what the premise was behind it, and it's a weird premise. But I guess I wasn't expecting it to be as ecchi of a series as it is. Because I also don't have that much experience with ecchi series. Like, I can't tell you the last time I watched an ecchi anime, and they're very few and far between I've watched. I say, like, probably the last manga I read that was, like, full-blown ecchi would probably be, like, over a decade ago. I read To Love Ru and To Love Ru Darkness, and probably around that same time would be Rosario plus Vampire, because that's heavily ecchi. So, but it just, I was kind of like, whoa, I wasn't expecting, like, I mean, once again, knowing what the premise is that she has to take off her underwear, like, it still just didn't, I guess I wasn't expecting them to kind of, like, show off as much as they did. I was like, Jesus. But, obviously we get introduced to our two lead protagonists, Takamine, and we also have, Koshi, was it Shirota? Is our other protagonist. And obviously she's at the tippity top, both academically as well as sports wise. She's the student council president. Them even saying, like, oh yeah, she became student council president in her first year. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm sure there's other characters, but immediately my brain goes to Madaka from Madaka Box, because she's like one of the few examples I can think of, like a first year being the student council president. There's another series I'm thinking of that might have had that too, but Madaka Box is the one that immediately comes to mind. But yeah, like, she's on one end of the spectrum and Koshi is on the other, where he's like, I'm so invisible to other people, no one notices me. I should also know, I really like the art style and the character designs. Like, there's something like the shape of the characters. There's a very, like, interesting shape to, like, especially like their faces, but especially around the eye area. I think it's interesting. But speaking of eyes, I think it's a really neat decision to make it so, like, all the background characters, all the other characters, like, unless you're an important character, you don't have eyes. And it kind of reminds me of how Persona 5 handles, like, background NPCs. They're like those, like, silhouetted shadows, but they have, like, they're not detailed at all, especially their faces. All you see is their, like, they have some hair and you'll see their mouth, but that's it. It kind of gives me that same feeling. I think that's so interesting because I don't see a lot of games that do that. And so, like, I'm not used to a lot of anime doing that either. So I think that's such a neat aesthetic choice. But it turns out Takane and Koshi have gone to the same schools for a while. We don't know for how long. It seems like while they were younger. Obviously, they're in high school now, so who knows? But it's like they've never really interacted. And he always thought, like, well, she's so, like, out there, like, above me. Like, why would ever try to be friends with her? But yeah, they had he was eating lunch in, like, the PE changing room, and she came in there and took off her shirt, and she wasn't wearing a bra, and he's like flipping out about that. Was that the case, or I'm misremembering? Either way, and he sees that, and then in class we get the whole display of, oh, like, she got, like, a 98 on the test, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, she got a 98? That's wild. She always usually gets perfect score. I was like, that's kind of the issue that's here, but for her, it's all about perfection, which we'll talk about later on. So she takes off her underwear, and Koshi is like, wait, what's going on? Was that a dream? Deja vu? And he's like, wait, no, I definitely dreamed that I had a 52 in that test, which I love that he's like, oh my God, that's the highest score I've ever gotten. But then it's also like, wait, was that deja vu? Wait, she had a 98. Now she has 100. What's going on here? And so he ends up confronting her later on about it. And she's like, oh, I see. You saw me. And I thought it was interesting how she was like, you saw me, must have seen me in, like, the gym room, like, changing. Because I guess for her, it's like, that's the only time it would have happened. Because, like, why would you remember this specific? Because, like, the time travel of it all is really interesting, how that works. Because I was, like, knowing the premise was, it was kind of a time travel thing, I thought was interesting. Because I was like, she doesn't go, like, she subconsciously goes back in time and changes things. It's going to be a weird reference I'm going to make. Not weird, but it's just like, I'm going to have to explain it. It's like, it kind of reminds me how Click, in Click, like, Adam Sandler, like, when he fast forward or did certain things, so often it became like, oh, it would automatically skip certain things in his life because he basically would be an autopilot throughout all that. It kind of feels like they kind of do a similar thing where maybe Takane goes back in time, whatever she wants to change, she goes in autopilot mode and does that. But then but maybe it's just as simple as it goes back and like history's rewritten to fit the narrative that she wants. Not necessarily because she even says like when she wakes up, so even she blacks out with it because every time rewound, Koshi woke up being like, whoa, what? But like she does the same thing. She'll wake up and whatever needed to be changed has already happened. So that's why I was like, I don't know if she goes back in time and does an autopilot thing, which is interesting because like that would also mean like Koshi goes into autopilot too. But like I said, it could just be as simple as no, that thing just magically gets changed. It's interesting, like you look on Wikipedia, this is labeled as a sci-fi series. It's not even like a supernatural thing. Yes, time travel is science fictional, but it could also be a very, like I said, depending on how they want to do it, like it could be labeled as supernatural considering like it's an ability that she doesn't know where it came from, how she got it. For one, why it works the way it does. But yeah, so that's just interesting, like whether we'll get to the really nitty gritty details of how that works, or it might just be a thing of shut up, it works, leave it alone. But like I said, it just makes me wonder, like, what is the intrinsic details of how that operates? But either way, Koshi confronts her and she's like, wait, you saw me, didn't you? And then she's like, okay, I'm not going to hurt you. He's like, what? She's like, no, I'm not going to beat you up. We can just have a conversation. Fixed him some water. And then he's like, oh my God, like I thought he was worried she was going to poison him, but he's like, oh my God, like, is she going to attack me or whatever? But she dodged the water and it's like, okay, we're good. I thought that was going to, because I was like, oh, the opening, like before, we got to the meat of the episode, like, which feels like a terrible turn of phrase in this, in the meat and potatoes, I guess would be better phrasing of that, was like, we saw him like on top of her, touching her bare chest with her shirt open. And I'm like, okay, so I thought the water thing would lead to that, which it technically does, but she dodged it, and I was like, oh, interesting. But they'll kind of explain everything and prove it to Koshi about what he saw. She took off her bra and then like let the water splash her this time. Because basically the premise is every time she goes back in time, basically she has to sacrifice her underwear, whether it's a bra or panties, to make the time travel thing happen. You're like, oh, interesting. And so that's why she needs Koshi to be her closet. And I love that she's like, well, you've got this question and this question. He's like, dude, I haven't had a time to really, he's thinking to himself, I haven't even had time to formulate a thought. And because the moment she was talking more and more, I was like, ooh, like her personality is not what I was expecting it to be. She kind of reminds me, and these are very like recent examples to use, but she reminds me of Ira from Dan to Dan meets Mona from Madaka Koraiwa is Impervious to My Charms. She's kind of got that like holy, like that, oh, I'm great and amazing, like I'm special, I'm number one. She's got that same like haunting, like that Hime, like Oju-sama, like inflated ego like a Ira. Mona kind of has it too, but that's like a defense mechanism. But also like, I'm curious, like, is her reason, like, without spoiling, because where the anime is, we haven't really gotten into why Ira is the way Ira is. You could speculate. I have my thoughts about it. I threw out my theories of what caused that, her to have that personality. But, where the manga is, they might have covered that, but who knows. But at least where Mona is in Madaka Koraiwa is Impervious to My Charms, the anime, you kind of understand why Mona is the way she is. And I'm curious if Takane, like, has something similar where there's a reason why she has that personality, or is it just going to be a thing of, no, that's just her personality? I'm curious to see, because she's always been so obsessed with being number one ever since she was a kid. And that's where it's like, Mona's always been in love, and that's why she took an interest in Madaka, because it's like, you're the one person who isn't captivated by my charms and stuff, which even though he was, once again, if you've never seen Madaka Koraiwa, I highly recommend you check it out. It's a very cute romantic comedy. But either way, so I'm curious what her, whatever the case may be, she's kind of had that number one mentality of, I always got to be number one, got to be number one. And the first time her powers awakened was in a like relay race, and she got the baton, but she came in second place because a bento box she had eaten that day was not good. It upset her stomach, and she came in second place. She got so upset that basically she ended up pissing herself. And then she tried to say like, oh, like that was showing, that's a representation of my ambition. And then Koshi's thinking in his head, like, wait, that was your takeaway from you pissing and wetting yourself? But it's like, yeah, that was the first time her powers ever activated. And when she woke up, she won first place. And so she's been utilizing it ever since. And that was in the 5th grade. So at the very least, it's been like over a decade of her having this power. Big question is, like, is this a hereditary thing? Like, did she get it from her mom, and did her mom get it from her mom? Is this something like the generation of her family they've had, or is this like a new thing? Will they ever explore that? Will you just be like, nah, it's a thing that she can do, shut up and accept it? Like, whether you get into the, like I said, nitty gritty of it's something hereditary or not. I mean, it's her thing, but I was like, I mean, I'm making it seem like it's just the female side of her family. If it's a hereditary thing, you never know. There could be her father's side of the family, because I mean, he could have like a mom that did it and it transferred to him, and then like now he passes on to his daughter. You don't know. Like I said, whether they'll get into that, and that's just speculation on my part, because it could be like, no, we're not going to dive into that too deeply on the explanation of that. But yeah, because now that Koshi knows the truth, which is so interesting considering she must be pretty good at it. Like, she was able to keep this secret for like maybe over, well, I said a decade, but it's probably in less than a decade, but probably like, it's only been like probably like 5 or no, it'll probably be like, yeah, 5 years. It's only been like half a decade, really. I gave that too much of, but it's like, yeah, she was able to keep that secret for 5 years. Interesting enough, like no one has seen you do that except for Koshi. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time, or wrong place at the wrong time. But now you're also thinking like, well, you know, maybe there was a reason for that. Maybe there's some time travel shenanigans in that. Oh, this needs to happen because we need to change the future from whatever it is. Like, not saying that she knows that, but you know, there's probably like even deeper layers to this. Maybe not. But, you know, like I said, first episode, having no idea where the story's going to fully go and what shenanigans to expect. You know, I'm just spitballing stuff here. But yeah, like her asking Koshi to be her closet. It's like, yeah, because I'm gonna need you to carry around underwear, be around me all the time. It's like, yeah, you are basically gonna go from a nobody to a somebody by being around me all the time. Because she's like, yeah, this is too weird, this is too crazy, I'd rather not be involved. But then she's like, no, you have to stay. And then like I did not see that coming when he fell on top of her, and she's like, wait, and puts his hand on her boob. He's like, oh my God, am I going to get a reward? I was like, is that what she's going to do? And then she screams. I was like, no way. I was like, that's super effed up. I was like, she is so devious. Very much like, that's an Ira move. It's Mona could be devious like that, but not as devious. But that's definitely more an Ira move. It's like, not to that extreme, but you get it's the similar flavor. Maybe not exactly an Ira move, but I was like, wow. And then people come and they call the cops and everything. I was like, Jesus, that's so effed up. You're forcing his hand, and you're like, cool. You have to basically accept and swear to be my personal closet, because if you don't, you're going to go away as a sex offender. You're like, Jesus, that's so effed up. You're putting him between a rock and a hard place. That's so jacked up. So she rewinds time and is like, cool, I could always go back and change that. Because once again, it seems like it's based on intention and will. She basically has to will into like what she wants to change. Well, you also once again don't know how far back this can stretch and how this can change. Maybe we'll dive into it more and more as things progress. But it's like, how much of a time window does she have before she can change something? Like, does it have to be in the next, like, you can only change something within the next like 24 hours? Like, can you only go that far back, or what? You know, I'm curious to see whether they really set the parameters for that, or are they going to be very loosey-goosey with the rules as the story progresses. But yeah, our boy kind of has no choice. And I was like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I did not expect her personality to be like that. I don't know what once again, I read the synopsis, didn't really read into the character, so I had no idea to expect that to be what she is. But once again, because I mean, there's the popular characters that are very like chill and mellow and very like kind and sweet. And then you have people like Takane, who are very much like, I think I'm God's gift to Earth type of situation. Once again, like an Ira. So it never crossed my mind that that's going to be what her personality is and how dubious and devious she was. And just like kind of like, oh, you're basically my slave now. Put my panties on, and then you put my bra on. But he was like, no, like, he closed his eye when he put her underwear on, and then she's like, no, put my bra on. He's like, no, I can't do it. And she's like, interesting. She's like, every time something like where you get a chance to see my body, you always look away. She's like, I don't know whether or not you're doing that. Like she said one thing, and then another one it was like, oh, or if that's just you being bashful, or is that you just being the gentleman that you've always been? So I guess it's a thing of, he's been in her class, and so she's probably always recognized like how it makes you wonder, has he ever in the past ever come close to seeing her body, but he never did because because he's so like, oh, like I don't want to do that. He's always avoided it. So this has never come up before, but maybe it's always closely happened before. And now this is the one time in life where it did in fact happen. Like I said, if things didn't end up getting changed by some timey-wiminess. But I'm wondering, because like her bringing up the whole him always being a gentleman, even though like they haven't really talked, but I guess for her, like it does seem like when he was saying all that, thinking to himself like, oh, we'd never be friends because I can't really talk to her, he was walking away and she had turned towards him. So I think it's a thing of, I don't know if it's a thing of she's always liked him, so that's why she's kind of happy about this situation, or what. Because she seemed like she had taken an interest. She's always kept an eye on him, maybe. But who knows? We'll dive into that more as the season progresses. But yeah, very interesting circumstances. I was, like I said, just interesting. I also love the representation. I'm curious why it looked like, I was about to say like why the butterfly, but I'm like, I get like the butterfly effect and stuff like that, so it makes sense. But also going through the gate and kind of almost like these clocks, and it's like also like the scribbly line that it gets drawn and then it rewinds and gets unraveled, and I'm like, if you've ever seen The Good Place, it kind of reminds me of like the whole notion in that is like, oh, time is like a Jeremy Bearimy. I think it's Jeremy Bearimy, or it's something like that. It's not Jeremy Laramie. I think it's Jeremy Bearimy. I always forget. It's been so long since I've seen like early The Good Place. But essentially, it's like, oh, time is so like it's not such a straight line. It's all wiggles and like scribbled that it looks like, once again, a Jeremy Bearimy when you spell it out. It's a whole thing. It's a bit from The Good Place. But I'm wondering if what that's supposed to mean, like how time is so like not the straight line. It's just all like wiggles and just like it's just not straight. So I'm wondering if that's what that's just simply supposed to represent in that capacity. So yeah, like I said, for interesting premise. Interesting execution. I'm really curious to check the series out and see where it goes. I Like I said, I haven't seen any trailers or anything like that. The only thing I did was like read the premise, so I got all that in the first episode. Like I said, going forward, it's just gonna be like, what type of shenanigans and situations will Koshi find himself in, dealing with the whole Takane of it all, being kind of stuck by her side, because she is the student council president, and we see in the outro there are other characters. So I'm wondering, are they other student council members? Is she the? I mean, you'd assume there's, but I'm curious, like if the other student council members are just like vague random NPCs in the background, not NPCs, but regular background characters, or whether they're the characters we see in the outro. Will he be forced to join the student council? Very much funny. I made the comparison to Madaka Box, and it's like, well, yeah, like Madaka kind of forcing her best friend like along to be part of like the whole thing as well. But anyway, going on a tangent, like I said, I'm excited to see where this really interesting series ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.